I want you to fully understand urinary incontinence. There are 3 different types of urinary incontinence that are most common and what a lot of people experience. It can be an embarrassing and it can make you feel disgusting and just not great. And it is so common. The reports vary from 60 to 75% of women in America have urinary incontinence at some point in their life, and you don't have to be one of them. But if you are and you want to get rid of it, then I want you to watch this video fully, because we're going to go through the different types of urinary incontinence and so to how to identify which type of urinary incontinence you have. And then I'm going to talk about one tip that can help you start to heal your incontinence today. All right. So here we go. I'm Dr. Allison Feldt, and I help women across the United States heal their urinary incontinence so they don't have to be peeing their pants when they do fun things like play with their kids or play with their grandkids or run marathons. So incontinence can happen across the lifespan, and it is really common in older women, and also extremely common in younger women and even in teenagers. We find that some women who were athletic as young girls and grew up athletes were actually peeing their pants as young as 8, 9, 10 when they're doing activities. And there's reasons for this. And the reason are often because of the pelvic floor. And the pelvic floor is this bowl of muscles that helps to support the bladder and keep us continent. Let's dive into the 3 different types of incontinence. The first type of incontinence we're going to discuss is called stress urinary incontinence. Now, you might be like, I'm not stressed out. I don't have incontinence because I'm stressed. No, it's not that. It's incontinence because of jumping or running or sneezing. It's incontinence with an activity that produces some kind of force. So if you have a cold and you start to get incontinence, that is called stress incontinence. And that often happens anytime that there is excessive force placed on the bladder. Then the bladder can't hold the urine, and you might leak some, you might leak a lot, you might leak a little, you might require a pad, you might require a change of pants. That is called stress urinary incontinence. We'll take a look at why that happens in just a minute. The next form of urinary incontinence is called urge urinary incontinence or urgency incontinence. This is where maybe when you get home from work or you pull into your driveway, you all of a sudden can't even make it to the front door because you have to pee so bad. You might leak a little bit, but you might not. You might just have like this extreme urge that you just can't make it to the door and get your key in the door. Or the minute you put your key in the door, then you have to pee like right then, and you can't even hold it to the bathroom. And that's where you pee. Thank goodness you're home because you can change your pants, but we don't want you to experience that anyways. So that is called urge urinary incontinence or urgency incontinence. And it can also happen when you wash your hands, you hear running water, or you start to drink water. All of a sudden, you're like, have to go right now. Even though your bladder didn't just like all of a sudden get full, it's just that something triggered that urgency to stimulate your immediate desire and need to go to the bathroom or to leak. And so those are the 2 types of incontinence that are well known. There can be a combination called mixed incontinence where you have stress incontinence and urgency, and you deal with both of them. So that is called mixed incontinence. And when we have that, we have a mixture of urgency and stress incontinence. And so not only are you peeing when you walk, bend over, cough, laugh, sneeze, run, or jump, but then you're also having to pee and having excessive urges throughout the day. So let's break down these different types of incontinence and give you a tip to start healing your incontinence today. So the first type of stress incontinence. Stress incontinence happens when the pelvic floor itself, the muscles, can't contract enough to stop the flow of urine. And so you might think, hey, so then I'm really weak. I need to be doing Kegels. Absolutely not. That's not going to help cinch off the urine. So no matter if you can do 100 Kegels or you can't do one at all, stress incontinence is oftentimes not happening because of you needing to do Kegels. What happens is that something about that contraction isn't enough to stop the flow of urine. So if you're coughing or sneezing and it's like no matter how hard you squeeze, the pee is still coming, it's because of a couple things. It could be, number one, it could be that your bladder is a little bit below the line of the pelvic floor itself. So after we have babies or after we, especially during our menstrual cycle when things are heavier, the bladder can sit a little lower. If the bladder is sitting below the line of the pelvic floor, then if you go to contract the pelvic floor, essentially what you're doing is if the bladder's down here, you're actually contracting below the level of the bladder and you're not kinking off the urethra enough to be able to stop any urine. And you might actually, if you're squeezing and contracting, you might actually be causing more pressure and more leakage. And so that's not the method in order to stop the urine flow. So the stress incontinence could be because of a descent of the bladder. It can be because of weakness of the pelvic floor, not being able to contract or get a good enough contraction to seal off the urethra in the bladder from leaking. And then it can also be because the muscle itself is just too tight and doesn't work. So if the muscle is already fully contracted, there is no way that that muscle can contract any further to stop the flow of urine. So those are 3 different causes of stress urinary incontinence. Now let's move on to urge urinary incontinence. So when we have an urge urinary incontinence, what we often see is that the pelvic floor, so these muscles themselves, there's 3 layers here. So we have the first layer, the second layer, and the third layer. The pelvic floor itself becomes very tight, and oftentimes when it becomes tight like that, it becomes fibrotic and it doesn't have good blood flow, and therefore it doesn't relax and contract. It gets stuck in this shortened position. When it's stuck in this shortened position and you're constantly contracting, there's a reflex that goes to the bladder that says, hey, she's contracting. That actually means that she needs to pee, so I better go pee. And so that gives you this false urge when the bladder's not full that you have to pee. It is a reflex from the pelvic floor tension that's generated that goes to the bladder that says, I have to pee even though you don't have to pee. And you might tell me, my pelvic floor is not tight, it's anything but tight. Maybe you feel like you're blown out after having kids. I hear this all the time from people. Really, truly, what it is though, is it's just not having a connection or ability to open these muscles. And if you don't have that ability or connection to control these muscles and control the relaxation and opening, then you end up with this tight pelvic floor that's cement-like and doesn't move. And so then it just sends the signals to your bladder that you constantly have to pee, or you have to pee when you get a trigger. And so we want to change the quality of the pelvic floor so it can move, so you don't get these false triggers that your bladder isn't ready to empty. When your bladder isn't ready to empty. So the bladder can hold urine for a good 3 to 4 hours, really regardless of how much water you drink or intake. And so that's really important to know. So, you should be drinking. The bladder loves water. The more you drink, the less acidic the bladder becomes. So hydrate, even though that might sound scary, you can start by practicing in your house. The more that you hydrate, the more that the bladder is going to be able to hold the urine, and you're going to help break the cues of urinating and giving false cues from the acidity of the bladder when you don't actually have a full bladder. So the more you hydrate, the more it's going to help decrease the acidity. Decreasing the acidity is going to help decrease the spasms that the bladder experiences when you have to go pee, which creates this soliloquy of having to go pee. And so that is what causes stress incontinence, and then that is what causes urge incontinence or urgency. And then you can have a mixture of both. So you'll have stress and urgency combined and have to deal with both of those. A very important key for both of these types of incontinence in order to help you start to heal your incontinence is actually the ability to elongate your pelvic floor. And so what does that even mean, and why is that important, and how do I do it? You betcha I'm gonna tell you. Here we go. If you have your pelvic floor, which is this bowl, and I have a grape inside my pelvic floor, inside my bowl. Imagine my bowl gets really tight and my grape is still there, and the grape is my bladder. The tighter the bowl, the more squeeze it puts on the bladder, the more pressure it puts on the bladder, the more you're just gonna leak urine anytime you get a force from stress incontinence, or it's gonna create a worse urgency, not allowing you to hold once you get the urge to go. So what we need to do is we need to learn how to elongate and open up the bowl so that the bladder has space to fully fill and sit in its right place, so the pelvic floor isn't the one squeezing out the bladder. So you're like, lady, what are you even talking about? How do I do this? I will tell you that if you think that Kegels are the answer, why haven't they worked for you in the past? And they don't work for most people. Most of our grandmothers and mothers, they all did Kegels and they didn't work, right? So that's why we have to reverse engineer this. We have to help open up the bowl so the bladder has a place to go. And it is so easy to do this that you're gonna be like, what? How is this even possible? I will tell you. What we are gonna do is we are gonna use our breath to help open up the pelvic floor. How do we do that? Here we go. You're gonna take a nice deep breath into your hands. If you place them on your lower belly, take a nice deep breath here. Exhale and let it go. Inhale here. Exhale and let it go. I'm sitting on a hard surface and I can feel my 2 sit bones. If you can sit down and do this exercise, I want you to feel your sit bones on a hard surface. And when you inhale, I want you to feel your sit bones moving away from each other. And then exhale, you feel a natural recoil. That is your pelvic floor opening and elongating and then recoiling on the exhale. So here we're gonna do it again. You're gonna deep breath in, think about opening your pelvic floor, opening everything that goes through the pelvic floor, spreading the sit bones. Exhale, you get the recoil. If you can do this type of lengthening exercise, you are gonna have such improved bladder control, whether it be stress incontinence, urgency, or a mixture of both incontinences. And so we want to help start to control the bladder, and this is how you do it. You get more range of motion of the muscle, because then all of a sudden when you have to pee, you can get the power you need to stop the pee coming out of the urethra. So do this every single day for 5 minutes a day. When you get a premature urge to go pee, maybe it is, you're washing your hands and all of a sudden you have to go, do this type of breath to unhook the pelvic floor and help mitigate that urge. And then if you do have to go to the bathroom, then you can contract and squeeze in order to make it. But if you can let things go and open and relax, you are going to cure your incontinence. I'm Dr. Allison Feldt. I really appreciate you watching this video. Please like and subscribe to our video and our YouTube channel. We really value our followers, and we are so excited to help change the world of pelvic health and give all the women in the world bladder control, because everybody deserves that. No one wants to be, in a nursing home in depends, and we can totally change our futures if we change our pelvic floors. Take care.